Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cameron Sadler. I am a sophomore from Dothan, Alabama, and I am an integrated marketing and communications major. It is my pleasure to introduce the panel on quality journalism in a digital age. I'd like to introduce Mr. Joe Hyrkin, CEO of Issuu, Mr. John Mennell, founder of Magazine Literacy, and Ms. Lori Oglesbee, a former journalism instructor at Prosper High School.
So impressive.
Hi, everybody. We're going to quickly share a little bit of information on some slides. We'll do a few minutes each, and then we'll do a Q&A session. For the students in the room, how many of you are studying or majoring in journalism? And how many of you are going to be journalists? Raise your hands high, like proud. Thank you. The future of the world and democracy depends on you. So thank you for taking a stand and throwing yourself into this. I know that it can be challenging sometimes, and not everyone fully understands the importance of the endeavors that you're jumping into. But everything that we've been talking about last night, today, and tomorrow revolves around what we have up here on this wall. So it's a noble endeavor to be jumping into and important. All right, so we are going to talk about, we've combined an interesting session here on quality journalism in a digital age, what it really means to start to provide high quality content as we're moving forward. And in so many ways, we've only just touched the surface of what this digital experience is becoming. And sometimes in particularly here in Mississippi at this conference, we have this debate about print and digital and all these different pieces. And the truth is, at the end of the day, we're all about getting the right content in front of an audience so that we can have an impact on people's lives. And what are the pieces to start to be able to do that? So the key elements, of course, of any journalistic offering, any content offering is the ability to create and get in front of that audience. How do you connect that content to an audience? I'll share a little bit about what we're doing at Issuu to help facilitate that in a digital way. We're going to dig into the necessity of journalism a lot today, and kind of how it, in so many ways, is the core foundation for democracy, for us moving the society forward. At the end of the day, so much of what we're exploring, learning, changes in our society are happening because of the roots of journalism. And of course, the necessity of reading, literacy, in all its many forms. So we're going to combine all these different points in this session. I hope it's interesting and fun. So in a digital way, what's exciting on the digital front is the ability to take really high quality content that has traditionally lived in the pages of a publication and be able to get it in front of an audience wherever they happen to be, in whatever time frame, on whatever format makes the most sense. And so a couple of things that are beginning to happen is, even in the digital way, Linda talked a little about replicas and how everyone sort of thought that was the way to make magazines available digitally. And sure, using those pages matters, but more importantly is to be able to take the content that exists within the pages of a publication and start to make it available in the formats that people are consuming content, whether it's on Instagram or in a story format such as that you can start to make available on Snap. So the ability to actually take the pages, the elements, and start to make it available in a story format in the digital platforms that people are consuming that content in. Sorry, let me just get to, it's a little slow. And importantly, we're going beyond the notion of just pages, right? It's really content and the ability to share it in a whole range of different elements. We just saw one story, the ability now to start to take and merge elements together in a visual story that can then be shared. And from such a visual story like this, one of the things we're going to be working on with the folks at Morris Media and Ware is the ability to now use the story itself to drive depth consumption in the whole publication. All right, and now it should work. Typically what happens in sort of connecting with an audience is there's a whole set of people on the left-hand side, publishers, designers, marketers, distribution managers, all the different people who are taking content and trying to get it in front of this audience. And what's happened over the last 20 years in particular is digital has gotten right in the middle, and the folks in the digital world, where I come from in Silicon Valley, have sort of said, here's a whole bunch of technology and a whole bunch of stuff you can use. Good luck. Go figure out how to get it in front of people. If you're Google created this thing called AMP, Accelerated Mobile Pages, to help give access to pages much more quickly. Of course, you have to be an engineer at a publication just to be able to use AMP. Facebook came up with this thing called Instant Articles a few years ago and tried to convince everybody that they were helping to make content more quickly available. And in fact, Facebook was actually leveraging that for a whole bunch of data. Increasingly, these platforms are amazing as a way to reach an audience because that's where people are. But the key is to be able to have a set of technology that can enable you to use your content and get it distributed to where that audience is without having to create individual stories, individual publications, individual replicas, if you will, for each particular audience, because it becomes extremely expensive and complicated. And I don't know if I'm supposed to do a replica, an article, a story, a quote, an Instagram post, a picture, an image, a video. Like it's just totally overwhelming. So the idea is to be able to take all the quality content that's being created in one publication and then be able to distribute it to wherever that consumer is. So creating an audience around your content can be overwhelming on one hand. On the other, if you start to look at providing pieces of that content in a way that the people who are on those platforms are consuming them, it can become a way to dramatically expand the audience and also dramatically expand the revenue that becomes available from the pages of the content that you've created. And it very nicely marries the full quality print publication with a digital experience with the audience that is moving around and engaging with that content on a range of different devices. All right, so that's sort of the first piece around building the audience side of things. And then you can start to make that content available in a whole set of ways. As a transition, I wanted to share a very short video interview with Neha Madera, who's actually a student of Lori's at Prosper High School in Texas. And she's a senior this year on her way to study journalism at University of Texas. She spoke at the Issuu Generator Summit late last year, talking about the importance of journalism. And here's a student who is combining all these different elements: print, digital, audiencing. She's in a small town in Texas and has actually created a global following both around the content she's created and the points that she's standing for.
I think digital media is the way to go in terms of storytelling right now. Like, our newspaper is actually all online, it's not print, just because that's the way that teenagers and adults are getting their information. It's all about storytelling, since, you know, even as a student journalist, it doesn't really matter what you do, you always have your own story to tell, your own voice. So I think it's important to be able to express what you feel on a platform like this. We didn't understand how much we had at our fingertips when it came to this. We thought it was just going to be us telling our story and then having something overturned, but it opened up so many opportunities, like TED Women and being awarded the Young Journalist Award at Women's Media Center, and having all of these other opportunities that we have because of the community of storytellers that we have supporting us. I think it's taught me that I'm not alone. You know, we reached this national platform and there were hundreds of other students who were like, oh my God, that's happened to us. We didn't want to talk about it. And it makes us feel so much better about what we're doing because we know that we have an impact on other people. It's definitely shown me why my voice is so important and how strong and how impactful our voices really are, since that's something that I feel like a lot of teenagers struggle with, especially in high schools where you have adults who kind of suppress your voices and try to silence you. It's really hard to find your voice through that. But when you realize the power of it, I mean, you can do anything.
All right, Lori, you're up next.
Okay. I think my first slide's there. Hi, I think they told you I was a high school teacher, so do me a favor. All those phones y'all have been so intrigued with, especially the students, let's put them away. I've watched y'all the entire time, and we're not going to have it anymore. Phones away and laptops down, because you aren't taking notes. Good one. I got your number. I care about you, because here's what I'm going to tell you. Those words over there, right there, I was willing to risk everything that I have for those words. And what we're going to talk about is that, and I want you to pay attention, because today I'm unemployed because I stood up for those words. That's how much I believe in it. Because whenever I was told I had to take down content off my students' newspaper site, I refused to do it. I respectfully refused. I had the highest ratings of any teacher on my campus for for whenever they come in and observe us. I was a national yearbook advisor of the year. I was the Texas State Teacher of the Year, and my career ended because I wouldn't take down 3 stories last year. But I tricked them and I said, you know what, never mind, I'll just retire, so give me that clock. So it's true. It does actually still run. So I have taken a huge cut in pay, but I don't mind, because that right there is more important. And what Neha Madera is doing makes my heart swell with pride, because she understands the importance of journalism. Yesterday it broke my heart because I'd committed to be here. She was testifying in the Texas Senate to get New Voices legislation passed, a state where they thought never would have a chance to get it passed. And we have bipartisan support, because if you believe in something, 5 kids can change an entire state, and that's what's happened. And they've brought on more kids as they were going. And that same fire that they have, we should all have. Because right now, the media, journalism, is under attack on so many levels that it breaks my heart. It's hard not to be a little finger pointing here. I'll try to avoid it in case I offend somebody, but if I do, you can tell me at dinner tonight. Buy me a drink. Or better yet, I'll just buy you a drink, but whatever, okay? Because I can't stand to hear that journalism isn't a good thing, that it's not great. It's kind of like being that high school teacher. People always look at me like I have lobsters crawling out of my ears when I say I teach high school. And when I add journalism to it, then they want to spit on me. It's really almost that bad. When Neha wrote a piece for CNN last month in March, the comments underneath it broke my heart. Racist comments about her being an Indian. Comments, and she's an American citizen, by the way, comments about the media and how worthless it is. Let me explain to you, without journalism, democracy fails. It cannot exist without journalism. And what we have to do is so incredibly important. America does need journalists. This year has been declared the year of the student journalist, 2019, by the museum, which all of those beautiful graphics up on the second floor are from the museum, and by the Student Press Law Center. And that Student Press Law Center is for you college kids too. It's free advice on legal situations. It's a wonderful organization. So it's nationwide that this has been declared. And they're fighting for legislation that will overturn censorship by principals and administrators who are just doing it. For example, our principal lied in an interview, and that's why one of the stories had to be taken down. Because we couldn't correct the story, we had to just take the whole story down. Another story was about editorial. We were banned from writing editorials. We wrote an editorial saying that the curriculum is set when school starts and it shouldn't be changed because of a phone call from a parent. But we stopped reading a separate piece because it had homosexual overtones. I know. Say it again, sister. What? That's right. It's like that Allstate commercial. What? Exactly. That's exactly what it is. Because if we don't teach students to be thoughtful consumers and to understand the role of media, you see, I'm all for STEM, but STEM needs another M on it. It needs science, technology, whatever that E is. What do you call it? Engineers, math, and media. That means both consumers and generators. We need to have media literacy taught in schools. We need to know fact from opinion, and we need to start it now, and that's why it's important. Sure, if you thought that a separate piece had homosexual overtones that offended you, well, write about it. But don't ban the book for everybody. Have a public debate about it. Let there be some decision instead of one person calling and saying, my child can't do that. And then we changed the entire curriculum because a parent called. Now, it happened to be an associate superintendent, but, whatever. That's true. So we have to do that. Students are generating incredible content. You would not believe how good the student newspapers and yearbooks are out there. It'll shock you to find out how good some of them are. And so we have to put that. We often want to shelter kids. We want to discredit them, but we rarely want to listen to them. And we better start listening, and we better start training them, and we better make sure that people are willing to put everything they have on those words right up there. Do I have an amen? And you can't get your phones back out. I see that scrolling.
Speaking of act, that's a tough act to follow. First thing I want to do is apologize to Jeremy for the design of my slides. I could probably learn a few things from designers. I'm John Mennell. I'm the founder of magliteracy.org, which we founded on International Literacy Day. It's the first and only global, industry-wide literacy project that supplies magazines to at-risk readers. And we've been doing it for a number of years. I want to thank Samir for the invitation. It's really a privilege to be here. You've been telling my stories for many years, as Linda Ruth and many other folks. And I really appreciate it. And your enthusiasm is so contagious. I know everybody knows it, but it keeps me fired up. And I really appreciate that support from you and also from the whole industry. We've been very fortunate. We've been at this for a number of years, and we've been able to be very successful because the industry has embraced this idea and has supported us, every step of the way, and we really appreciate that. By the way, Happy Earth Week, everyone. We do quite a bit of recycling. We supply both new and recycled magazines to at-risk readers, but we're in the business of moving the reading materials from where they are to where they are. Every magazine that's available, we want to get our hands on every magazine that's available, and whether it's on your coffee table and you're done reading it, or whether it's on a pallet, at Quad Graphics or wherever the magazine is, whether it's on a CVS newsstand at the end of the month, ready to age out. Our mission, and we have a long way to go, and we've made so much progress with the industry's help, but we have a long way to go. Our mission is to get our hands on every single copy we can. There are an endless supply, and you'll see some numbers here, but an endless supply of at-risk readers that we're trying to reach, not only in the United States, but worldwide. And an endless supply of magazines, and we're trying to create a marketplace to put those two things together. I'm so pleased to see the students here, and I love, obviously, what you both are doing. When I was in my journalism class in college, a community recreation director came to our class looking for volunteers to help high school students start a community newspaper in Candor, New York, where Harry Chapin said the mayor lied. And you'd have to have been around a while to even know who Harry Chapin is, but if you Google it, you'll see why he said that. But anyway, I spent my summers up at school and spent a summer walking and hitchhiking 20 miles from campus to Candor, New York, to get that first issue out. And it was, it's transformative when you get involved with that. And young people are the lifeblood of our project. We're very active on college campuses. We've been active in Mississippi thanks to work that we've done with Samir and throughout the state. Actually, after Katrina, we received some financial support, and a publisher came to us with 150,000 magazines, and we were, I'm sorry, it was less than 150,000, but we were able, it was a truckload of magazines, and we were able to get, they were children's magazines, and we were able to get them to every Head Start program in Mississippi after Katrina hit. And, you know, the scale of the work that we do, we're currently an all-volunteer organization. The scale of, we ran the organization for years on $6.95 a month, and that was because we taught ourselves about the lamp stack, and Joe knows a heck of a lot more about that, but to create our first templated website, now we're on WordPress, but you know, our involvement has just grown astronomically. Thanks to the people in this room and getting our stories out and encouraging the industry to supply us with support and resources and magazines and that sort of thing. I'm only going to spend time on a couple of slides here. I do want to point out, you know, magliteracy.org. If you go to the website, you can see the whole deck. You can read the whole deck. There's a contact form there. Contact us. We're very responsive, and the work that we do is done in communities at the grassroots level, and every person, every individual person, any group of people, any organization can get involved, and we'll find ways to get them involved. Our first magazine literacy project was organized, it's over 10 years ago now, by a classroom of kindergarten children in San Francisco, who collected magazines for delivery to a homeless shelter nearby. And these are the kinds of activities that we inspire, and it's so easy to do, anybody can do it. Thomas Jefferson once wrote, "If a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be." He continued to say, "Where the press is free and every person is able to read, all is safe." So reading is where it all begins. And I'm often asked the question, you know, why give that magazine to that reader? What, you know, in the condition that they're in, what are they going to do with that magazine? And literally, why give an Architectural Digest magazine or a Country Living magazine to a homeless person? Or why give, you know, Taste of Home or Food Network magazine to a hungry person? And I'll begin by telling a story not found in my LinkedIn or Facebook profiles, but just to give you a little bit idea of how and why I got involved with this work. So I volunteer in my community. You know, I run this project as a volunteer, nights, weekends, whenever I can. By day, I'm an IT consultant for a very large IT company, and I work in their emerging technologies practice. I love technology. I love to leverage it for solving problems. I graduated from a large university. I have a solid income. I live in a 3,600 square foot house. I have a 3.5 acre pond. I live in a small Midwestern college town. Our schools, our local schools, score 10 out of 10. I mostly buy and eat organic food. Past few years, I've flown about 500 million miles. I love rockets. I love the stars. I love Raspberry Pis. I love golden retrievers. I love to sail. So do you think I'm a good candidate for a magazine subscription? Probably, right? I mean, we're all good candidates, right? But if you met me back in 1995, you would have found me homeless and hungry for a period of my life. Between 91 and 93, I was laid off 3 times back to back. Once by Bankers Trust on Wall Street, and actually I worked in the same IT group that Jeff Bezos worked in. And of course, I know that, he doesn't know that. And then I worked for AT&T and MCI. So, I mean, if you met me, you know, still a good candidate for a magazine subscription? I mean, I hope so, but it's not necessarily what comes to mind. Or how about the mom who escapes with her child and her life and her dignity, but little else to domestic violence shelter? She had a full life. Now she's left with nothing, almost nothing, right? Tonight and every night, 30,000 moms and kids are going to be sleeping in a domestic violence shelter. They're afraid, they're wondering what tomorrow brings. So imagine, and we do this every day. Imagine the simple comfort that we're able to bring, or we say we, are the consumers that support us and the publishers that support us. Imagine the simple comfort that a magazine brings. That's the stuff that our dreams are made of. Or for the 1 million students who are homeless nationwide, or one of the 1,000 homeless students in Madison, Wisconsin. And I was shocked by that number. I spent some time in Madison. We have an office there. We have a very successful operation in Madison. I was shocked to hear there were 1,000 homeless children, really invisible, right? The federal government requires every community to count the number of homeless students and to report on it. And you can find that number anytime, anywhere on the web. Here in Oxford, a year or two ago, there were 93 homeless children, right? So imagine what giving a magazine to that child or another to their sibling or mom or dad says to an invisible child. It says, you see me. It says, I matter. I can get through this. So obviously I recovered from my dislocation. My wife wouldn't agree, but I have recovered. But how? How did I recover? How do we recover from these things in our lives? And I'm here today because of the joy and power of the magazines I read as a child, as a teen, as an adult. I stop at every newsstand. I'm sure you do as well. I look forward to my subscriptions at home. I read and recycle magazines from every flight to new readers. I steal the magazine from my seat pocket, every one of those flights that I take, and the ones that, one or two that don't go to my grandchildren, we insert into our recycling supply for literacy. You know, it was the highlights in the dentist's office. It was the Reader's Digest that I would read. My grandmother had this green corduroy seat. I remember sitting on it and reading Reader's Digest cover to cover. A Boy's Life, the Popular Science, the Popular Mechanics, I devoured as a teen. Especially you go to the back of the magazine where the classifieds are, and which led me to spend hours and hours designing hang gliders and hovercrafts. I always thought I was going to build a hang glider and fly it. I went to Kitty Hawk when I first met my wife. I saw them taking off the dune. I couldn't imagine doing it. Some things were, magazines are inspirational, they're aspirational, but that's the power of the magazines. And I've bought and sold full sets of Wooden Boat magazine 3 times. Every time I get a hankering to build a backyard boat, which I've never done. So it's this love affair that we have with magazines, particularly print magazines, that have conjured up magliteracy.org. We live it and we breathe it, and we all do. So why is our industry's undivided attention to literacy so compelling and so imperative, especially now? And you've heard some of the stats from this morning, which I greatly appreciated. And there's other information on this slide, and I won't go through all the details, but I've mentioned some of these things already. But again, I do this every day, and I've been doing it for years and years. And this information still shocks me. And one of the most shocking statistics is the one here where Reading is Fundamental says that 2/3 of children in poverty, and that's as many as 12 million children in the United States, have no books at home, 0 books at home. And so if we're saying that an experience with reading materials is what matters to create readers, and 2/3 of children in poverty have 0 books at home, how does that ever get addressed? We can solve that problem today. There are millions, tens of millions of magazines available that we, working together with the industry, plan to channel into those homes to fill coffee tables and to fill backpacks and to turn that around completely. One last point on the importance of literacy, and then the power of magazines, the special power of magazines. If you've ever mentored or tutored a child who has trouble reading, and I've done that, and it might have been a middle school child. Someone told me today, Jim, if you haven't learned to read basically by third grade, you're SOL. And there's no doubt about it. If you're a teaching student, a teacher, but once a child moves on in grades, if they're unable to read, they're lost, and they're lost in every subject. And adults, of course, unable to read were once children. And if you can't read, you can't read anything. I mean, in other words, anything important, and that could be an instruction manual, that could be doctor's orders, that could be a digital article, right? I mean, reading is so fundamentally basic. But consider recently, I mean, not recently, but just consider that there's so much inhumanity in the dark corners of the world. And we all know what we're talking about, and it's been going on for a long time. It's not just what we experience ourselves. It's been our human nature. Consider the ignorance and the mistrust that feeds humans in humanity to humans. Civility is the antidote, right? We can be civil. We can get past that inhumanity. And thoughtful literacy has the potential to vaccinate us against that scourge. And we know that promoting literacy establishes a lifelong reading habit. So why are magazines so special for literacy when compared to other media? And this is the point that I want us all to understand deep within our hearts and our souls. Linda, in her presentation this morning, makes very compelling arguments for the strength and the power of magazines. What we find is that because there are magazines for every topic, every title, every language, every interest, we can reach deeply into needs and match particular magazines to particular literacy needs, and thus increase interest, engagement, increase outcomes. So for example, in the Bronx, there's a program called Rock the Boat. It's a mentoring program where they build wooden boats, and then they put them out on the East River, and they run a water ecology program. And we've supplied them with Wooden Boat magazine, and National Geographic, because they asked for them. We were contacted for lacrosse magazines for a donation that was airlifted to a Serbian youth in Croatia. And most of you know what that part of the world has been through, who were forming a lacrosse team. We were contacted by a school north of the Arctic Circle. We never say no. This was for Inuit families. They wanted National Geographic and comics. It took us some time. We found a company. We worked with publishers. We worked and we airlifted. And you know, maybe you don't know here, but we know up north what the polar vortex is. The polar vortex was coming this way. We were airlifting National Geographic and comics to Inuit families in the Arctic Circle. And that's a great part of the story, but an even greater part of the story is that the family that organized that was at least 5 or more years ago, opened a magazine newsstand in their food pantry that they still operate to this day. And one of our goals is to open magazine newsstands in every food pantry across America and around the world. So I know that I'm using up too much time here, and I won't take up too much more time, but main thing I want to talk about now is the consumer side and the lessons that we've learned about consumers. So our mission, as I said, this is our big, hairy, audacious goal. If anybody knows what that is, our BHAG, is to build the most powerful literacy marketplace on the planet, tapping the enormous potential of magazines, and by engaging every stakeholder in the supply chain, from printers, from paper companies, to printers, to publishers, to consumers, from the mailroom to the boardroom. To share the joy and the love and the incredible power of reading magazines with at-risk readers. We know that consumers cherish their magazines, they build whole collections, they donate whole collections to us, they love to read them, they love to share them. Consumers are wildly enthusiastic about reading and sharing their magazines, enough so to create real value for literacy and real value for publishers. And our goal is to work with you to tap that value. Consumers are more likely to buy a magazine or subscription for themselves if they know that it will have a second life for literacy. We know that from working with consumers now for well over a decade. A consumer who gifts a magazine is more likely to renew the gift time after time, year after year, when they know it's going to comfort that mom or that child in the domestic violence shelter, right? Or the homeless team or the chef in a job training program. So I guess just in summary, join us. We need your prowess. We need you to tell our stories, to invest in our literacy dream, to imagine with us what's possible and make it so. These are wonderful pictures on these slides of some of the work that we've done. These are children in Uganda. This is a young girl in a food pantry in Wisconsin. This is a director of a job program at a food bank, training homeless and unemployed to become chefs. This is an amazing woman who contacted me from a very large advertising agency in Austin, Texas, to say that she was willing once a month to fill this literacy newsstand at the Street Youth program for homeless youth in Austin, Texas. This is a lovely supporter who found us collecting magazines at a Whole Foods. We were encouraging shoppers to buy magazines off the newsstand and donate them immediately to us for literacy. She ran home and wrapped up her Taste of Home and Light and Tasty and some other magazines and brought them back to us. Of course, a mom and children reading. And I won't go through all the rest of this. This talks a little bit about how we do what we do. But again, workplace literacy happening not only supports our program, but companies love it. The people working in companies love that they're collecting magazines and donating to us. National Geographic sent us pallets of their climate change edition, very helpful to teachers and schools. I would almost say this was me. This is a young boy at a Salvation Army looking through these magazines here, and that's a Scientific American, and he is someone after my own heart. And again, these volunteers have come to pack up boxes of magazines for children in India. So it's just so much fun to do what we do, and we really appreciate everybody that has helped make it possible. We've done so much, but we have so much more to do. And we look forward to working with you on that. Sorry about taking so much time.
All right, thank you. We have a few minutes, I think, for questions. Go ahead.
Gloria, we're all curious in more details about your school, how all that went down, if you're willing to share.
I'm willing to share, but I think that,
Repeat the question.
oh, sorry.
Maybe you just put,
What
that
happened?
in the context of
New Voices.
New Voices and really teaching journalism.
Okay. had award-winning program. The students in that program won 175 awards that year, individual, state, and national. Texas is serious about competing, and we entered every contest, and we took home the gold. And principal was new, insecure, had moved around a lot. He still has not spoken to the press. No one from the district has spoken to the press. So whenever their voices were shut down and they found out that I wasn't coming back, the initial was to, oh my gosh, let's save Miss O. And so I sat down and I said, no, this isn't about me. This is about your voices. And that's the bigger issue here, because a job pales in comparison to this. So there's a movement called New Voices. And I taught the students, you know, I drill the First Amendment and the 5 rights, because people died for that. And it's important. And so New Voices guarantees that students will have that on the college and on the high school level. And it needs to be moved forward by students. And so when all this happened, the local media picked up our story because the kids spoke out. You can tell that Neha is quite the speaker. Another student, Haley, is a good speaker as well. The other kids' parents were afraid for them to speak out because they knew they'd be retaliated against. Neha has been retaliated against. Right now she has a 70 in newspaper. I'll apologize for telling her that. But how can you have a 70 whenever you had an op-ed in CNN last month and you did a TED Talk and you won the Young Journalist Award from the Women's Media Center, and Issuu asked you to speak at the Issuu Generator Summit? How can you possibly have a 70 in newspaper and you've published something weekly? But it's a high price, and Neha's been willing to pay it. She did not get into Texas the first round. University of Texas, not the state. They do let you in. Well, New York Times picked up the article. It was just right, because the kids at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, by speaking out, had really set a climate where student voices were being respected. They've ended up being, the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas and the kids from Prosper are all part of a documentary that's being made that celebrates the 50th anniversary of Tinker, which is a decision by the Supreme Court in 1969 that says students do not shed their rights at the schoolhouse gate. They do, obviously, but 1989 we got the Hazelwood decision that limits. It says if a principal has a pedagogical concern, they can censor. The idea was if it causes substantial disruption to the school day. So these 3 stories he didn't like, in Texas, it's an at-will state. All you have to do is give a reason. You do not fit in with our faculty. And even though this principal had never seen me teach, and I think you can tell that I don't sit down and teach quietly. You know what I'm saying? There are no worksheets in my world. And it didn't matter. But the importance of teaching that journalism was worth it, and what's happening. And like I said, to see these kids testify in the Senate and in the House of Representatives is incredible. And Joe was one of the early people who contacted Neha and said, what do you want to publish? I'll publish it. And so I don't understand why schools don't see that there's anywhere a kid, why wouldn't we want that kid to be guided, taught how to do it with the integrity, the respect that it needs to be researched, well written, instead of just sending them down channels where they may not have those guidances. Instead, we're just shutting it all down for fear of it may look bad, or a few parent phone calls. And let me tell you, that's a problem in schools. I mean, I was constantly having to defend teaching and what I taught in journalism. I told someone last night, I got a call in from the good principal, the one before this one. And he goes, hey, I need you to help me out here. Got a parent on my case. But he was my defender instead of, the surrender. No white flags in his office. And I had to explain why I didn't use Breitbart and InfoWars in my journalism class, because I was using CNN. And I said, well, I do use Fox News. I do use red state, blue state. What we need is an engaged state. That's what I say. So it's that, yeah.
Other questions?
A question for John. How many receiving centers do you have across the country that can actually take these magazines in for distribution?
zero, which is the greatest challenge we face right now. The amount of support that we're getting has become enormous. And we want to be able to accept every bit of it and channel those publications immediately to readers. I shouldn't say zero, for example, because we're very resourceful. For example, we'll take truckloads of magazines, we've done this a number of times, send them straight to food banks. Well, food banks serve tens, hundreds of agencies. The food bank in New Jersey, we sent 200,000 magazines at one time. They serve 900,000 families. We just got a call from a publisher, had 20,000 magazines on a pallet in Preston, Idaho. And we immediately called the food bank in Salt Lake City, and we do whatever we need to. Currently, I'll say I have a very large supply of 200,000 magazines waiting for me shortly in Des Moines, Iowa, and need to scramble. And so for us, we're an all-volunteer effort. Each of these operations is a scramble, and this is where we've got to get to that next step, work with your guidance, your expertise, and figure out, we need to learn how to move magazines. We get tremendous help. Quad Graphics, Joel has been tremendous, others in the industry. I don't know if you know Doug Forstall in New Jersey, runs Rylco. He's been an angel. I mean, he's taken 10, 20, 30 pallets for us at a time. But we do need your help to get out of this scramble mode, to set up a proper logistical operation. We're firing on half of the 10 cylinders that we need to be firing on. I appreciate the question.
Any other questions, comments? Lori, I'll just ask you, you mentioned the different news organizations and this rise of fake news over the last couple of years. How does that impact the teaching of journalism and the understanding of journalism?
I think that's where media literacy starts, because not always the students that I get into a journalism 1 class understand even themselves the difference between real news and fake news. And even though it may be labeled with ad or things like that when you're scrolling a true news site. So I think it starts with the literacy, but then I think it moves to making sure that the stories are well researched, that they're accurate, that it's a responsible reporting of the story. And that's a training situation where the content is trustworthy. And we have to build that trust between the consumer of the news and the people who are generating it. And so that's why it's important to have it in high school, because you train people to be consumers of news. So once they get hooked on being consumers, they're more likely to be consumers as they become adults.
Has that changed, or are the fundamental principles still the same, but there's just a lot more distraction?
I think that if you go all the way back to the Hearst and Pulitzer Wars and yellow journalism, we survived that. We're going to survive this. But we also have to do our due diligence to make sure that we do protect the rights of a free press, and that we don't allow, if an outlet produces news that's not accurate at all, then we need to hold them to the task to make corrections and to be accurate and know the difference between opinion and fact.
Any other last questions? I'll just finish with one more around, so in the world of teaching journalism, how are you kind of talking about the relationship between print and digital?
I think that it's incredibly important. Just like I made all these kids put their phones down, some of them have slipped back on them. I know who you are. You can't deny its appeal. At lunch, I went immediately to my phone. I checked between every break. I think the immediacy of it is so important, but I think there's a place also for the long extended pieces, the pieces that, like we've been talking about, that you want to hold and savor, or maybe that you want to have added content, like on the new platforms that Issuu has, where the content comes alive. I think that you need to have engagement, whether it be with your hands or with that additional media. No matter, the journalism has to be solid. The writing has to be engaging. But we also need to make sure that we are meeting the needs of different consumers, and there's a place for both. And I think that there's something romantic about holding, I felt every magazine out there. I love to feel all the different textures. That paper, I'm going to be really happy tonight. Okay? And I love the smell of 2,000 yearbooks being delivered, that clay smell paper. I don't care, I still love it. But I also am excited about our digital content. We had a digital news site. We had digital content for our yearbook. There's a place for all of us because there's never enough content because we all need to have information. We just need to engage the people who consume it.
Thank you very much. Thank you both.
Thank you.